Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be going through another leg workout, but this time it's going to be hamstrings and glute specific. So let's get stuck straight into it. First exercise today is going to be a hip thrust. So a lot of people may believe that this is probably the best exercise for targeting your glutes. Whilst it's a good exercise, it probably isn't the best in terms of hypertrophy, but I like to start with this movement simply because it allows me to challenge my glutes in that shortened position and essentially just gets me ready for my workout. So if you're somebody that struggles to engage your glutes, I would highly advise starting with an exercise like this, do a couple of sets, get a really good contraction before you move on to your heavier compound lifts. So importantly as well, remember, you've got to make sure that you're in this machine properly. I need to move that all the way back because I've got quite a long torso. Place my feet on the pad, drive up, keep my core engaged. You can blow your back out on this exercise if you don't do it properly. So I'm keeping my core engaged, driving up, tensing my glutes as much as I can in that position, and then I'm going to come down. Now, not every gym is going to have this machine, and there are various different options you can do. You can lean on a bench and use a dumbbell, you can use a barbell, you can even use a Smith machine. So if your gym doesn't have this piece of equipment, I might do an independent video showing you all the variations of hip thrust you can do, but I'm not going to try and squeeze it into this one. One thing you want to consider when doing this movement to avoid hurting your back is it's just a short movement. So imagine you're just tensing your glutes. You don't need to be going through a whole range of motion because the chances are you're going to bring your lower back. I'll show you what I actually mean and get down on the machine. It's a short movement, so remember what I mentioned about keeping your core engaged, keeping your back nice and straight. I'm only really going to come down to about there, and then we're going to go up, engage, come down, keep my core engaged at all times and my back nice and straight, and then drive back up. We don't need to be going all the way down like this. That really brings a lot of my lower back into it, and especially if I was going to lift heavy, I wouldn't make it far on this movement. So remember, short range of motion, up, engage the glutes, and back down. So now we're going to move on to one of my favorite exercises, a dumbbell RDL. So the reason this is such a good exercise for your glutes and hamstrings is it challenges your glutes from this position, lengthened, all the way up to a shortened position. This is an exercise where you focus on hinging your hips, so hip flexion. So look, as I go down, I push my bum to the back wall. As soon as I get to the point where my hips can't hinge anymore, I drive up. A lot of the time people will stretch so far on this movement. If I go from here to here, again, I'm bringing my lower back into this exercise. So the aim of the game is hinge your hips. As soon as you get a good stretch in your hamstrings, drive up. So one thing that I notice a lot of people do when they're doing RDLs as well, and I've been guilty of it, is your neck. So essentially your neck wants to be in line with your back. So see how I come down initially? You may find that you're inclined to look at yourself in the mirror. So if I'm looking, trying to check my form, look how unnatural that bend in my neck is. And if you're lifting super heavy and you twinge your neck to the side, it's not going to end well. And also, in relation to how far down you can go, that's going to be dependent on your flexibility, but also your height. If you're a taller person like me, you're not going to get all the way to the floor. Whereas if you're shorter, you might see people getting all the way down there, and that feels perfectly fine for them. Only go down as far as your mobility allows. Don't ever be afraid to use straps. My hamstrings are gonna take a lot more load than my poor little wrists are, so these are a really good idea. Probably gonna go to a single leg press now. This is probably one of my favorite exercises at the minute for isolating the glute. The stability that the machine provides really allows you to just overload that glute. Again, it's going to challenge it from a lengthened position to a shortened position, but I'm not going to run the risk of blowing my back out or bringing too much of my quads into the movement, etc. I'm going to show you the setup, then I'm going to run through my working sets, and yeah, going to kill off those glutes. As with every exercise, I'm going to start nice and light, and I'm going to work my way up. So the initial start of this movement, foot is going to go nice and high. You can see how this is kind of set up for doing quad-based movements or hamstring and glutes. So I'm going to take it off, really nice and slow. When I hit this position and there's a 90-degree angle here, I'm going to drive up through my heel, engaging my glute all the way through. So at the very bottom of this movement, the glute's fully loaded. As I get higher and higher and higher, from about here to here, the load is then going to shift from my glutes onto my hamstrings. So if you want to really just keep the tension on the glute, you're going to come from here just to about there, and then you're going to spring straight back into each rep. If you do want to shift some emphasis to the hamstring, you're going to come up nice and slow, little bit of a pause at the top, and then come all the way back down. So I'm only going to do about 4 to 5 reps because this weight just feels super light, and I know I can lift a lot heavier, but I'm feeling good, I'm feeling warm, and I'm ready to start stacking a little bit more. So this will be my lead-in set, 10 to 12 reps. It's an adequate weight, it's feeling good, but I know I've got more in the tank. Rest periods in between my lead-in set and my top set, because I'm going to be challenging myself lifting the heaviest weight that's comfortable for me. I'd like to give myself between 90 seconds to 2 minutes at least. So obviously if I'm in a bit of a rush, I might scale that back, but if possible, I would always aim for about 90 seconds to 2 minutes for my rest. On to my top set, 6 to 8 reps here, nice and good, nice and controlled. Let's see what we got. Oh boy. Ooh, okay. One thing I like to make sure I do as well is remain consistent with my reps. So my first rep essentially should look the same as my last. Mechanical failure. I could quite easily manipulate my body and maybe bring other muscles into the exercise to achieve a rep. Well, that's not going to do me any favors. Now we've done our 2 compound lifts, I'm moving on to an isolation movement, seated hamstring curl. This is a brilliant exercise. So again, I'm going to do a couple of warm-up sets, then I'm going to go on to my working sets and give them an absolute beasting. With this particular movement, you might find that you struggle to get a good connection. I find that I like to move the seat really far forward. So for most people, you might aim to get that just underneath your knee. I like to have a little bit of a hang under so I can actually feel my hamstrings. As I come down, I'm just going to feel for that contraction. So you may find certain exercises you just connect with much better. You might prefer the lay down hamstring, which is right next to me here, or the standard single leg hamstring curl. It's important to find an exercise that you connect with really well and then just do it over and over and over again. So I'm going to move on to some calf. I'm going to get a little block so I can get a bigger stretch. So you might see on Instagram a lot of chicks doing this. Leaning forward slightly is going to lengthen your glute a little bit more. Realistically, it's not that important. You want to actually utilize the machine, lift as heavy as you can. There's handles here that you can grip onto. There's a back pad so you can rest your back against it. As long as you perform the reps correctly, get to full contraction, have a little pause. Go slow on the eccentric. So a lot of people underestimate how important the eccentric on each exercise is. There's no point in just going, rah, rah. You're doing more damage to the muscle fibers in a good way by controlling the eccentric part of the movement. This is my last exercise for today. I try my best not to do too many exercises. I focus on performing the exercises that I am doing correctly and getting the most out of each workout. So sometimes with these movements, you can actually use your hands to spot yourself. So when you struggle, get to full contraction, and then again, negative part. Just really control the eccentric. Oh. Oh. My God. And that is how you destroy this party bum. Show you a couple of exercises I do to start my leg workout. So I've got external hip rotation in my right hip. If you see how my feet are positioned now, that is almost like a natural movement. Whenever I walk, my right foot is slightly turned out and my left foot is ever so slightly turned in. So I've been having a lot of physio work, sports massage, and I've been given these specific exercises to fire that part of my glute before I start a workout, build some strength, which is hopefully going to help me internally rotate my right hip and slightly externally rotate my left. So I'm going to start with my left hip for external rotation. So I'm going to lie down on my side, slight bend in this knee. I'm going to take this foot and put it just underneath my knee, and then this knee is going to come to the floor. The aim here is to externally rotate whilst keeping my foot against the back of my leg. Aim to engage just about around here. This looks super easy, but for me, who has quite weak hip flexors, this is actually quite terribly painful in a good way. So I've been doing 3 sets of 10 reps, 2 to 3 times per week, and I do this before I start my leg workouts. What I'm aiming to do here is squeeze my knees together. So I'm using the pad just so it's a little bit more comfortable. So I'm going to squeeze those knees together, and then I'm going to internally rotate whilst twisting my ankle in. So the aim, keep the pressure on my knees, internally rotate until I feel it here. Now you may find that when you do this, you also feel it inside on your adductors. That's generally just going to be, again, because they're weak and you're not used to doing this exercise. So again, 3 sets of around 10 reps. Just focus on contracting that desired muscle. So the aim of me doing these movements is just to correct that external or internal hip rotation. It's going to strengthen those stabilizing muscles and hopefully help me stand a little bit better. And of course, it's going to improve my squatting movements, my leg press, my mobility. So there you go, a little bit of an insight into my hamstrings and glutes workouts. If you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for future content.